Hello you guys, what is up and welcome back to my channel. Today we are just stepping outside a little bit just to sketch, and I was thinking, because it's such an overcast day, what can we do to make this scene a little bit more interesting? So let's find out as we start the sketch down below. So one of the obvious things that I started off with, of course, well not of course, but one of the things that I thought is easiest for me to start with is always the sky. And the reason for that is because once you pull those like really saturated blues out, it just looks really bright and really vibrant. And I think that just because the sky is often such a big part of a sketch, or at least in my case, because I do a lot of landscape sketching, and the sky will take up, I would say, a little bit over a third of the whole sketch in particular. So I thought that that would be a great way to sort of like increase the vibrancy of the scene a little bit. And then of course basically what you do is similar when you're editing photos, you just increase the saturation dial up a little bit. So instead of doing like a muted beige, just try to add in a little bit more red and a little bit more yellow, and you're trying to kind of pull that colors out and try to avoid mixing it with complementary colors, which essentially when you have like a color wheel, you have like the red on the opposite of like a green. So when you have like a red mixture and you add a green into it, it will instantly mute the colors down and decrease the saturation, or how like punchy or how strong the red is. That's kind of how I think of saturation. So things like that where you try to get more purer mixes is what I try to do in terms of increasing the saturation. And of course I try to be really careful not to rely too much on the whites, because although white makes gouache a little bit more opaque, but because I have the luxury of actually using dried gouache instead of dried watercolor, where I would really need the aid of white gouache to make a color opaque. Here I don't need it as much. I need it maybe for like certain colors, kind of like yellow, because yellow I think in general tends to be a little bit of a transparent color. Like whenever you get like really deep yellow, it's very rare unless it's like pure from the tube, but especially when it's like dried form and you're diluting it with a little bit of water, it's really rare for yellow to stay super opaque. So in that sense, I try to add yellow a little bit for like the mixtures of the wall, and everything else I really just try to really not use as much color. For example, for like the window reflections on this like giant big green one here, like I try to not mix in like too much red. I try to make the color a little bit more pure. So basically just punching out the colors a little bit wherever I could see that it needs a little bit more support is where I try to push up the vibrancy. And then I think the opera pink that I use kind of like as an outline drawing, it really helps as well because it just pops the vibrancy out a little bit. But essentially what I tried to do here in the sketch is just to keep things really simple. I didn't want it to be a complicated painting. I just wanted to see and experiment a little bit what I would do with like a blue sky, and I feel like the painting itself already has like a really vibrant feel compared to when the sky is kind of like a muddy gray, for example. But of course that goes to show that it's just like what kind of painting vibes you're going for, because for example you can use like a light gray backdrop, and therefore this, if your sky is less vibrant than your object, then your object or your subject actually stands out more. So it's really subjective, and I guess it's like how every painting always happens in relation to each other. And I did think as well about framing this kind of painting with a little lone tree on the side. And I mean, I do see the trees in real life, and it's in real life in the scene itself. It's like all over. It kind of surrounds the scene from three sides, so like the bottom, the left, and the right. But I really decided to only do the right bit because I wanted all of the detail to be in the center. And I think that's why that even though there's like a little bit part, the lower part of the central pier, I didn't really put any detail in it. I could have, there's like a really punchy blue, bright blue colored room box kind of situation that's below there, but I just wanted to keep the details minimal and just focus all the details in the center. And I find that because there's also text in the central, so it's central pier, and I believe it's the same wording in Chinese as well. I realize that when there's text, your eyes just go to it immediately and it knows to read it. Perhaps it's just your brain kind of registering information and that it's important information, which it is, because this is technically like the pier in the central of Hong Kong, and it has like ferries that go all over to like the connecting islands and everything, and it's actually really cool. I realized that like that I'm working here, and it's like the hub where everybody goes here to take, like people who live on the islands, they take the ferry to go here to go to work, and they take the bus from here, they take the train from here, and then there's like that reverse commute as well that goes all the way around. after work. And yeah, it's just a really interesting place to be, a really interesting hub to be, and I just wanted to commemorate that by sketching this central pier. And essentially that's it for this sketch. I don't think I made it too complicated, and I didn't focus on too much of the details, and it's really something that I'm trying to focus on is how do I get architecture and in like the simplest way possible. So for example, for the bottom part of the sketch, I actually didn't sketch in the pillars. I just essentially used negative space to make sure that I'm outlining the shadows, and I could let like the shadows bleed a little bit into the pillars and not really drawing too much attention there. So just trying to simplify everything, focusing on the most important bits, and just let kind of like the drawing speak for itself. And that's gonna be it for today's sketch. Thank you guys again so much for joining me today. I hope you're sketching out there, you're enjoying the breeze, you're stepping out, you're having a good time, and I hope you're having a good day. I'll catch you guys again here, same time next week. In the meantime, let me know if you guys are sketching in overcast weather, or if you have any tips or tricks on what you do for overcast weather. Like, do you go earlier in the day for higher contrast or later in the day for that, or do you just make up your own light and shadow? But yeah, let me down below, and maybe I'll be able to actually improve. I don't know. I'm just spewing out at this point, but I do hope to improve day by day as these sketches go along. All right, I'll catch you next time. Bye.